Now let's begin. Drew Vega had learned to trust his instincts during 12 years on the force, but nothing had prepared him for that Tuesday morning in late September. He sat in the passenger seat of the patrol car, nursing lukewarm coffee while his partner, Terry Bean, drummed his fingers on the steering wheel to some silent rhythm. The radio crackled with routine calls, a fender bender on 5th, a noise complaint in the warehouse district. Normal. Safe. Predictable. Drew's phone buzzed. A text from his wife. Krista, Mom wants Lily for the weekend again. That okay? He frowned. Velma Gifford had been unusually persistent lately about spending time with their 6-year-old daughter. Every weekend for the past month, sometimes during the week too. Krista insisted it was innocent. Her mother was just lonely since Earl had his stroke last year. Drew typed back a non-committal response. Something felt off, but he couldn't articulate why. Maybe he was just tired. The double shifts were catching up. You good? Terry glanced over. At 43, Terry was 10 years Drew's senior, with gray creeping into his temples and laugh lines that suggested he'd seen enough of humanity's darkness to appreciate its light. Yeah, just family stuff. Krista's mom still hovering? Drew nodded. He'd mentioned it last week during a slow patrol. Terry had shrugged it off. Grandparents did that. But Terry didn't know Velma the way Drew did. Cold. Calculating. She'd never approved of Drew, had made it clear from day one that her daughter had married beneath her station. Police work was noble but not profitable, she'd said at their engagement dinner. Krista had 3 brothers, Gerard, Lorenzo, and Austin Gifford, who'd all gone into the family's real estate business. They treated Drew like hired help at family gatherings. The radio squawked. All units, we have an anonymous tip called in. Possible child welfare situation at 2847 Maple Grove Road. Requesting officers to investigate. Drew's blood went cold. He knew that address. Terry reached for the radio, but Drew's hand shot out, gripping his partner's wrist. That's my mother-in-law's address. Terry's eyes widened. You sure? I've been there 100 times. Drew's mind raced. It's a mistake. Has to be. Probably is, Terry agreed, but he was already pulling the car around. We still need to check it out. Protocol. Drew's hands trembled as he pulled them into fists. Anonymous tip. Child welfare. At Velma's sprawling colonial in the expensive part of town. Impossible. Lily was supposed to be at school. Krista's brothers had their own families, their own homes. The house should be empty except for Velma and Earl. The drive took 8 minutes. Drew counted every second. He texted Krista, "Where's Lily right now?" No response. He called. Straight to voicemail. Maybe leave it to another unit, Terry suggested quietly. Conflict of interest. No. Drew's voice came out harder than intended. If it's nothing, I want to clear it fast. If it's something. He couldn't finish the sentence. Maple Grove Road was lined with oaks just beginning to turn autumn gold. The Gifford house sat back from the street, all pristine white columns and manicured hedges. Drew had always found it oppressive, more mausoleum than home. Velma's Mercedes was in the driveway. So was Austin's black SUV, and Lorenzo's sedan, and Gerard's truck. Family gathering? Terry observed. Drew's instincts screamed. Krista didn't mention anything. They approached the door. Drew's heart hammered against his ribs. Terry knocked, 3 sharp raps. Drew held back, trying to look professional, trying to ignore the dread pooling in his stomach. Velma answered. She was 62, but maintained herself with the dedication of someone half her age. Perfect silver bob, perfect coral lipstick, perfect mask of surprise. Drew? What are you doing here? Ma'am, we received a call about. That's when he saw her. Lily. His Lily. Standing in the hallway behind Velma, wearing a dress Drew had never seen before, frilly and white and wrong. Her face was pale. Her right cheek bore a purple-yellow bruise. Her eyes went wide when she saw him. Daddy. Everything in Drew's body screamed at him to move, to rush in, to grab his daughter and run. Terry's hand clamped on his arm, fingers digging in hard. Don't go in yet, Terry whispered, barely audible. Velma's expression flickered. Surprise, anger, then calculation. This is inappropriate, Drew. Lily is fine. She had a little accident on the playground. Step aside, ma'am. Terry's voice carried authority. We need to speak with the child. Through the doorway, Drew could see past Velma into the house. The living room. Jesus Christ, the living room. Cameras on tripods. Professional lighting equipment. His 3 brothers-in-law standing frozen, caught mid-conversation. And children. For maybe 5 children Drew didn't recognize, all dressed in similar white outfits. All looking terrified. Lorenzo Gifford moved toward a laptop on the coffee table, fingers reaching to close it. Nobody moved. Terry's hand went to his weapon. Drew, call for backup. Now. But Drew couldn't move. His eyes were locked on a doorway at the far end of the room, partially obscured by a camera. Through it, he glimpsed what looked like a bedroom set, but wrong. Stuffed animals arranged too carefully. A bed with restraints poorly hidden beneath pink sheets. His daughter's bruised face. Cameras. Equipment. Children. The pieces slammed together with horrifying clarity. Drew. Terry's voice cut through the fog. Back up. Now. Don't let them see you. Drew's hand shook as he pulled his radio, stepping back from the doorway, trying to keep his voice steady. Dispatch. This is Unit 7. We have a 10-33 at 2847, Maple Grove. Need immediate backup, child services, and detectives. Multiple children on scene, possible endangerment situation. Be advised, suspects may attempt to destroy evidence. Velma's face hardened. You're making a terrible mistake. Ma'am, step outside the house. Now. Terry's weapon was drawn, but pointed down. Behind Velma, Austin Gifford was moving toward what looked like a computer tower. Drew's training kicked in, overriding the rage threatening to consume him. Terry, they're going to wipe the drives. We need to secure the scene. More movement inside. Gerard herding the children toward a back room. Lorenzo still at the laptop, fingers flying. Police. Stop what you're doing. Terry stepped forward. Velma didn't move from the doorway. You have no warrant. This is private property. And Drew, your family. You really want to do this? Do you understand what you're destroying? Drew met her eyes. Cold. Utterly void of remorse or fear. Just inconvenience. Like he was a problem to be managed. Lily, he called out, keeping his voice as steady as possible. Baby, can you come to Daddy? His daughter started forward, but Austin's hand landed on her shoulder, stopping her. The gesture was gentle, possessive. Drew's vision narrowed to that hand on his daughter's shoulder. Drew. Terry's warning came too late. Drew was already moving, shoving past Velma, crossing the threshold. He was vaguely aware of Terry shouting, of Velma screeching something about lawsuits, but all that mattered was getting to Lily. Austin stepped in front of her, hands raised in a placating gesture. Drew, buddy, you're overreacting. Let's talk about this. Drew's fist connected with Austin's jaw. His brother-in-law went down hard, crashing into the camera equipment. Lily screamed. The other children scattered. Gerard lunged at Drew, but 12 years of police training and pure paternal rage made it a short fight. Drew had him face down on the carpet in seconds. Cuff him. Drew shouted to Terry, who was already calling for immediate emergency backup, describing the situation in rapid-fire cop speak. Lorenzo made a break for the back of the house. Terry pursued, leaving Drew with Gerard pinned, Austin groaning on the floor, and Velma standing in the doorway, perfectly still, watching it all with those cold eyes. Then Drew heard it. A mechanical whir. His head snapped up to see Earl Gifford, who supposedly couldn't walk after his stroke, standing at the top of the stairs with a smartphone, calmly filming everything. You should have left it alone, Drew, Earl said, his voice perfectly clear, no slur, no weakness. This is bigger than you understand. Than you could possibly understand. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Lily was crying, curled in the corner. The other children stared with hollow eyes that had seen too much. And Drew realized with sickening certainty that the nightmare he'd just discovered was only the beginning. 2 hours later, Drew sat in the back of an ambulance, watching his world disintegrate. The house was swarming with cops, crime scene investigators, social workers. 6 children total had been removed, including Lily. They'd taken her gently, despite her screams for him, because protocol dictated that when a parent was involved in the initial response to an abuse situation, the child needed independent evaluation. His phone had blown up with calls from Krista. He hadn't answered. Couldn't. Not yet. Terry sat down beside him, holding 2 bottles of water. He offered one. Drew took it, but didn't drink. They got Lorenzo trying to climb out a basement window, Terry said quietly. Tackled him in the backyard. Computer forensics is already on scene. Drew, what they're finding. He trailed off, shaking his head. Tell me. Servers in the basement. Professional grade. Encrypted drives. But our tech guys say there's terabytes of data. The equipment in that living room alone is worth 50 grand, easy. This wasn't some sick family secret. This was organized. Sophisticated. Drew's hands tightened around the water bottle until it crackled. How long? We don't know yet. Kids aren't talking much, but social services thinks years. Maybe longer. Terry put a hand on Drew's shoulder. Your daughter's going to be okay. She's with good people right now. She had a bruise on her face. I know. My daughter. My baby. Drew's voice cracked. How did I not see it? How did I not know? Because you're a good father who trusted his family. You had no reason to suspect. I'm a cop. Drew stood abruptly. I'm trained to see this shit. Red flags. Warning signs. And she was right there. And I let her go to that house every weekend. And I... Stop. Terry's voice was firm. You didn't do this. They did. And we're going to make sure they pay for every second of what they put those kids through. Drew watched as Gerard and Austin were let out in handcuffs, heads down. Lorenzo followed minutes later, shouting about lawyers and false arrests. Velma walked out calmly, unrestrained but flanked by two detectives, her face a perfect mask of composure. Earl was last, no longer pretending to need his wheelchair, escorted by 4 officers. Captain Rita Morse arrived, a severe woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and a reputation for being uncompromising. She surveyed the scene, spoke briefly with the lead detective, then made her way to Drew. Officer Vega, you need to go home. Captain, I can help. I know these people. Which is exactly why you're going home. You're on administrative leave effective immediately. Drew's stomach dropped. What? What? Because your family is involved, and because you assaulted a suspect before backup arrived. I know why you did it, and I don't blame you, but there's protocol. We do this by the book, or defense attorneys will tear apart any case we build. Her expression softened slightly. Go home. Be with your wife. Figure out what comes next. We'll handle this. My wife. Drew's voice was hollow. Did she know? Was Krista part of this? Captain Morse's silence was answer enough. We need to question her, she said finally. Detective Ramirez is heading to your house now. I'm sorry, Drew. I really am. The ambulance was gone. The crowd of cops was thinning. Drew stood in the yard where he'd played with Lily last summer, where they'd hunted for Easter eggs in the spring, where everything had seemed normal and safe and good, and felt the earth shift beneath his feet. Terry drove him home. Neither spoke. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that seemed grotesquely beautiful. Drew's house, a modest ranch in a quiet neighborhood, looked the same as it had that morning. Krista's car in the driveway, Lily's bike on the porch. But nothing would ever be the same. Detective Maria Ramirez was waiting on the porch. 30-something, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for getting answers. 2 uniformed officers stood beside her. Drew, she greeted him. Is Krista inside? He nodded. I need you to let us talk to her alone. Can you do that? Drew looked at his house, his home, and felt like a stranger. Did she know? That's what we need to find out. The front door opened. Krista stood there, still in her scrubs from the hospital where she worked as a surgical nurse. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, her face confused and worried. Drew? What's going on? I saw the texts and calls, and then police showed up asking if you were home, and she saw his face and stopped. What happened? Where's Lily? Drew searched her eyes for any sign of deception, of guilt, of knowledge. He saw only concern and confusion. But he'd also thought Velma was just an overprotective grandmother. He'd thought Earl had suffered a debilitating stroke. He didn't trust his judgment anymore. Mrs. Vega, Detective Ramirez stepped forward. I need you to come down to the station to answer some questions. Questions about what? Krista looked between them. Drew, you're scaring me. Where's our daughter? She's safe, Drew managed. She's with social services. The color drained from Krista's face. What? Why? Drew, what the hell is happening? Your family was arrested today, Ramirez said calmly. Your mother, father, and brothers. We need to know what you know about their activities. Krista's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed the doorframe for support. Arrested? For what? Child exploitation. Multiple counts. Your daughter was at the scene. The sound Krista made wasn't quite a scream, wasn't quite a sob. She looked at Drew, and he saw his own horror reflected back at him. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. Drew, tell them. Tell them that's insane. Drew wanted to. God. He wanted to believe it was all a terrible mistake. But he'd seen the bruise on Lily's face. He'd seen the cameras, the equipment, the terror in those children's eyes. "I need to know if you knew," he said quietly. His wife stared at him like he'd struck her. "If I knew? Her voice rose to a shout. "Are you out of your fucking mind? You think I'd let someone hurt our daughter? You think I'd be part of whatever you're accusing my family of?" "Mrs. Vega, please come with us," Ramirez said. "You're not under arrest, but we need your statement. We need to establish your knowledge and involvement." "I don't have any involvement." Krista was crying now, mascara streaming down her face. "Drew, please. You know me. You know I would never." But Drew didn't know. Not anymore. He didn't know anything. They took Krista away in an unmarked car. Terry stayed until Drew made it inside, made sure he wasn't going to do anything stupid, then left with promises to call with updates. And Drew was alone in a house that suddenly felt too large and too empty and filled with questions he didn't want answered. He walked through rooms where his daughter had played, where his wife had laughed, where they'd built what he thought was a life. Photos on the walls showed a happy family. Drew and Krista on their wedding day, Lily as a baby, holidays and birthdays and ordinary moments that now felt contaminated. In Lily's room, he sat on her bed and picked up her favorite stuffed rabbit. She'd had it since she was 2. Mr. Hoppy, she called it. Drew held it against his chest and finally let himself break. His phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Officer Vega?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "This is Dr. Sarah Chun from Child Protective Services. I'm with your daughter right now. She's asking for you. I know this is complicated, but I think it would help if you could come see her." Drew was in his car before Dr. Chun finished giving him the address. The CPS facility was a low brick building designed to look welcoming and failing. Drew showed his badge, ID, really, since he wasn't on duty, and was led through a series of secured doors to a small room painted in aggressively cheerful yellows and blues. Lily sat at a table with crayons and paper, drawing something with intense concentration. Dr. Chin stood nearby, a slight Asian woman in her 40s with kind eyes. "Daddy." Lily dropped her crayon and ran to him. Drew caught her, lifted her up, held her so tight he was afraid he might hurt her. She smelled like the lavender soap from her bathroom at home, mixed with something antiseptic and wrong. The bruise on her face had darkened, a stark purple against her pale skin. "Hey, baby girl," he managed. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Can we go home now?" Lily's voice was small. Dr. Chin shook her head slightly, catching Drew's eye. "Not yet. Maybe not for a while. Soon." Drew lied. "How are you feeling? Are the people here being nice to you?" Lily nodded against his shoulder. "Dr. Chun is nice. She gave me hot chocolate. But I want to go home. I want my room and Mr. Hoppy. I have Mr. Hoppy in the car. I'll make sure you get him." Drew set her down, kneeling so they were eye level. "Baby, the police need to ask you some questions. About Grandma's house. About what happened there." Lily's face closed off. "I don't want to talk about it. I know. But it's important. Can you be brave for me? Will you stay with me?" Drew looked at Dr. Chun, who nodded. "I'll be right here the whole time." They brought in a child psychologist, a gentle woman named Dr. Patricia Oakes who specialized in interviewing young victims. The questions were careful, age-appropriate, designed not to lead or traumatize further. And slowly, haltingly, with long pauses and tears, Lily told her story. It had started small. Grandma asking her to wear pretty dresses for photos. Fun at first, playing dress up like a princess. Then the photos became more frequent, more controlled. Specific poses. Specific expressions. If Lily didn't smile right, didn't look the way Grandma wanted, there were consequences. Timeouts that lasted hours. No dinner. And when that didn't work, when Lily got older and started to question, there was physical discipline. Not always. Just enough to ensure compliance. Drew listened, his hands clenched so tight his nails drew blood from his palms. Terry had been right to grab him at that door. If he'd known the full scope then, he would have killed them all. The other children, Dr. Oakes prompted gently. "Did you know them?" Lily shook her head. "They came sometimes. Grandma said we were all models. That we were making special pictures for people who couldn't have kids of their own. That we were helping sad grown-ups feel happy." The lie was so perfectly constructed, so innocently sold, that Drew wanted to vomit. "Did your mommy know about the pictures?" Dr. Oakes asked. Drew held his breath. "No," Lily said firmly. "Grandma said it was our special secret. That mommy would be mad if she found out. That daddy would take me away and I'd never see anyone again. That's what Grandma said. Something in Drew's chest loosened slightly. Not much, but enough. The interview lasted 2 hours. By the end, Lily was exhausted, curled in Drew's lap, half asleep. Dr. Chen walked him to the door. "We'll keep her here tonight," she said quietly. "Tomorrow we'll evaluate placement options. With your wife's involvement unclear, and given your job as first responder, we need to proceed carefully." "She didn't know," Drew said. "Krista didn't know. That's for the investigation to determine. But Officer Vega, your daughter trusted her grandmother. Trusted her completely. That kind of betrayal, the psychological damage is profound. Lily's going to need extensive therapy, and she's going to need parents who are completely stable and present." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because I'm going to be frank. The next few months are going to be hell. Media attention, legal proceedings, your daughter reliving trauma over and over in court testimonies. Your marriage is going to be tested. Your career might be affected. And through all of it, you need to be the rock that Lily can hold on to. Can you do that?" Drew looked through the window at his daughter, now sleeping on a couch, Mr. Hoppy clutched in her arms. "I can do that." "Good. Because those monsters stole your daughter's innocence and childhood. Don't let them steal her future too." Drew drove home in darkness, his mind churning. The house was still empty. No word from Krista. He called Terry. "They're still questioning her," Terry reported. "No lawyer yet. She's cooperating fully. From what I hear, she seems genuinely shocked. But Drew, they found some things." "What things?" "Messages. Between Krista and her mother. Nothing explicit, but Velma was asking about Lily's schedule a lot. Suggesting times to bring her over. And Krista, she didn't question it. Enabled it, even if unknowingly. That doesn't mean she knew what was happening. No, but defense attorneys might spin it that way. You need to prepare for that possibility." Drew hung up and sat in his car in the driveway, staring at his house. The porch light was on. He'd forgotten to turn it off that morning. That morning, when he'd thought the biggest problem in his life was Velma being too clingy with Lily. When he'd been worried about double shifts and whether they could afford to refinish the basement. His phone buzzed. A news alert. His stomach dropped as he read the headline. "Child exploitation ring busted in affluent neighborhood. Police officer's family involved." It was starting. The circus. The judgment. The destruction of everything they'd built. Another text, this one from Captain Morse. "Check your email. You need to see this." Drew opened his email on his phone. The message from Morse contained a single attachment, a preliminary report from the computer forensics team. He almost didn't open it. Almost decided that some knowledge was too dark, too corrupting. But he opened it. The report outlined what they'd found on the servers in Velma's basement. Thousands of files, dating back 15 years. The Giffords hadn't just been producing material, they'd been distributing it. Selling it. A sophisticated network with international connections, encrypted communications, financial transactions moving through shell companies. And at the center of it all, a name Drew didn't recognize, the Shepherd. Someone had been coordinating this. Someone bigger than the Giffords. Someone who'd built an entire infrastructure for the exploitation of children, and Drew's in-laws had been key players. His phone rang. "Krista." "Drew." Her voice was raw, broken. "They're letting me go. They don't think I knew. But Drew, they're saying my family has been doing this for years. Before we even met. That the house, the money, the business, it was all built on." She couldn't finish. "Where are you?" "Still at the station. They said I shouldn't go home. That media is probably already staking out the house." "Drew, what do we do? How do we come back from this?" Drew thought about Lily's bruised face. The other children's hollow eyes. The years of abuse, documented and sold and distributed to feed the appetites of monsters. "We don't come back from this," he said quietly. "We go forward. And we make sure every single person involved pays. My family. Your family destroyed children. Including ours. I don't care what blood you share with them. They're not family anymore." Silence on the line. Then, softly, "What about us? Are we still family?" Drew closed his eyes. "I don't know. Right now, all that matters is Lily. Can I see her?" "Not yet. Soon. They need to make sure." He couldn't finish. "Make sure I'm not a monster like them," Krista finished bitterly. Jesus Christ. My whole life has been a lie. Everything I thought I knew about my parents, my brothers, Drew, I swear to God, I had no idea. You have to believe me. I want to. But wanting isn't enough anymore. He hung up before she could respond. Cruel, maybe, but necessary. He couldn't let emotion cloud his judgment. Not now. Not when Lily needed him sharp and focused. Drew went inside and started making calls. First to a lawyer he knew, Marcus Flynn, who specialized in family law. Marcus agreed to meet first thing in the morning. Then to a therapist who worked with traumatized children. Then to his own captain, arranging for extended leave. By midnight, Drew had a plan. Get Lily back, whatever it took. Support her through recovery. And find the shepherd. Because if there was a bigger fish, someone orchestrating this nightmare, Drew was going to make sure they burned too. He pulled out his laptop and started researching. The Giffords' real estate business had been successful, but not incredibly so. Yet they'd had money for equipment, for maintaining servers, for whatever this operation required. The money had to be coming from somewhere. Drew dug into public records, property transfers, business filings. The Giffords owned the house on Maple Grove outright, no mortgage. They also owned 2 commercial properties downtown, both rented to legitimate businesses. Nothing suspicious there. But there was a third property, listed under a shell company called Brightside Holdings LLC. Drew traced the ownership through layers of corporate structures until he hit a wall. Whoever owned Brightside was very good at covering their tracks. At 2 a.m., his phone buzzed. Terry, can you talk? Drew called him. What's up? Just got word from forensics. They cracked the encryption on one of the drives. Drew, there are files tagged with your wife's name. Everything stopped. What? Not her real name. A screen name. Krista G. In communications with other users. From years ago, before you two got married. What did the messages say? We're still reviewing them. But Drew, she might have been involved longer than she's admitting. I'm sorry. Drew hung up and sat in the darkness of his living room, feeling the foundation of his world crumble further. Either his wife had lied to him for years, or someone was setting her up. Both options were horrifying. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging. You don't know what you're involved in. Drew stared at the message. Then he typed back. Who is this? No response. He screenshotted the text and sent it to Terry, then to Captain Morse. Threats meant he was getting close to something. And that meant someone was scared. Good. They should be. Drew made a decision. He couldn't just sit back and let the investigation play out through official channels. Too slow. Too many opportunities for evidence to disappear, for witnesses to be silenced, for powerful people to make deals. He was a cop, yes, but he was also a father. And fathers protected their children at any cost, even if that meant crossing lines he'd never thought he'd cross. Drew pulled out a notebook and started making a list. Everything he knew. Everyone involved. Every question that needed answering. The Giffords were in custody, but they were just pieces on a board. Someone else was playing the game. The shepherd. Drew was going to find them. And when he did, God help them, because Drew Vega wasn't interested in justice anymore. He wanted revenge. The next morning, Drew met Marcus Flynn at a coffee shop across town, away from prying eyes and reporters. Marcus was 56, gray-bearded, with the weathered look of someone who'd fought too many ugly custody battles. He listened to Drew's situation without interrupting, taking occasional notes. The good news, Marcus said finally, is that Lily's statements clearly exonerate Krista. Unless they find concrete evidence of her involvement, CPS will likely approve her for supervised visitation within days, full custody within weeks. And the bad news? The media circus is going to be brutal. Your in-laws' trial will drag on for months, maybe years. Every detail will be public. Every sick thing they did will be in newspapers and on TV. Lily will have to testify. Multiple times. Defense attorneys will try to poke holes in her story, suggest she's been coached or is lying. It's going to traumatize her all over again. Drew's jaw tightened. What if they don't make it to trial? Marcus looked up sharply. What does that mean? Nothing. Just thinking out loud. Drew, I know you're hurting. I know you want revenge. But if you do something stupid, you lose Lily forever. They'll take her away, and you'll end up in a cell next to your in-laws. Is that what you want? No. Then let the system work. It's slow and it's imperfect, but it works. Drew nodded, but he was lying. The system had already failed. It had failed to protect Lily, failed to catch the Giffords before they destroyed countless other children. And it was definitely going to fail to catch the shepherd. After the meeting, Drew drove to the police station. He wasn't supposed to be there. Administrative leave meant stay away, but he needed access to case files. Terry met him in the parking lot. "You can't go in," Terry said. "Morse's orders. You're too close to this. I need to see the forensics reports, the communications logs, everything. Drew, please. I can't just sit at home and wait. I need to do something." Terry studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "I'll email you what I can. Unofficially. But if anyone asks, you didn't get it from me. Thank you. There's something else you should know. We finished analyzing those messages supposedly from Krista G. The metadata doesn't match. They were created on Velma's computer, backdated to look older. Your wife was being framed." Relief flooded through Drew, so suddenly his knees almost buckled. Velma set her up? Looks like it. Insurance policy, maybe. If things went south, she could throw Krista under the bus, claim her daughter was involved. Protect herself. Terry shook his head. "These people are calculated, Drew. Every angle covered. Which is why you need to let us handle this professionally." But Drew was barely listening. His mind was already racing ahead. If Velma had gone to that much trouble to create fake evidence against her own daughter, what else had she covered up? What other insurance policies did she have in place? That afternoon, Drew visited Lily again. She seemed brighter, more animated. Dr. Chen reported she'd slept through the night for the first time. Small victories. "Dr. Oakes says you're very brave," Drew told his daughter as they sat together on the floor, building a tower from blocks. "She says you helped them understand what happened." "Will Grandma go to jail?" Lily asked, not looking at him. "Yes. For a very long time." "Good." The word was cold, hard. Too mature for a 6-year-old. "She's mean. She hurt me and the other kids. She said mean things." "What kind of mean things?" Lily was quiet for a moment, stacking blocks carefully. "She said I was special. That people paid lots of money to see me. That I should be grateful." Her small hands trembled. But it didn't feel special. It felt scary and wrong. Drew pulled her close. "You were right. It was wrong. And none of it was your fault. You understand that, right? None of this was your fault. Then why did it happen to me?" The question broke him. Because she was innocent. Because monsters existed. Because Drew had failed to protect her. But he couldn't say any of that. "Because some people are broken inside," he said instead. "But they're not going to hurt anyone ever again. I promise you that." That evening, Terry sent the files as promised. Drew spread them across his kitchen table, printouts of messages, financial records, server logs. The scope of the operation was staggering. The Giffords hadn't been lone wolves. They'd been part of a network spanning 3 states, dozens of people, hundreds of victims. And at the center of every major transaction, every key decision, was a coded reference to the Shepherd. Drew traced the financial flows. Money came in through cryptocurrency exchanges, was laundered through multiple shell companies, then distributed to various producers, people like the Giffords who created content. The Shepherd took a percentage off the top, handled distribution, maintained the infrastructure. But who was the Shepherd? Drew cross-referenced the shell companies, looking for patterns. One name kept appearing, Warren Mitchell. He owned Brightside Holdings, which owned the 3rd Gifford property. He was also listed as a silent partner in 2 of the other shell companies. A quick search revealed Warren Mitchell was a real estate developer, legitimate, successful, respected. 58 years old. Married. 3 grown children. Served on the boards of multiple charities, including one for abused children. The irony made Drew sick. But it also made sense. Perfect cover. Pillar of the community, beyond suspicion. Drew dug deeper. Mitchell had purchased the Gifford property 10 years ago, then sold it to Brightside Holdings, essentially selling it to himself, at a massive loss. Money laundering, most likely. He'd also made several large, charitable donations to organizations that, upon closer inspection, didn't seem to exist. Drew called Terry. "Warren Mitchell, real estate developer. Tell me the task force is looking at him." "Never heard the name." "What?" Drew explained what he'd found. Terry was quiet for a long moment. "I'll pass it up the chain." "But Drew, if this guy is who you think he is, he's got resources. Lawyers. Connections. You can't go near him." "I'm not going to." Another lie. Drew spent the next 3 days building a case against Warren Mitchell that would make any prosecutor weep. Property records. Financial transactions. Communications logs. Everything pointed to Mitchell as the Shepherd. But it was all circumstantial. Suggestive, but not conclusive. A good defense attorney would tear it apart. Which meant traditional justice wasn't going to work. On the fourth day, Krista came home. She looked hollowed out, 20 pounds lighter, her eyes red-rimmed and haunted. They stood in the kitchen, the space between them vast despite the small room. "They cleared me," she said quietly. "Officially. The DA said there's no evidence I knew anything. That Velma fabricated those messages." "I know. Terry told me. My mother tried to frame me, Drew. Her own daughter. To save herself." Krista's voice broke. "What kind of person does that? A monster. I keep thinking, how did I not see it? How did I let my daughter go to that house over and over? What kind of mother?" "Stop." Drew moved closer. "You couldn't have known. They were careful. Professional. This wasn't some obvious red flag situation. But you're a cop. You're trained to see things. And even you didn't." She stopped, seeing his face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. No, you're right. I should have seen it. We both should have." Drew pulled out a chair. "Sit down. We need to talk." He told her everything. About the shepherd, about Warren Mitchell, about the scope of the network. Krista listened, her face growing paler with each revelation. "So it's not over," she said when he finished. "Even with my family in jail, there are more people out there. Still hurting children." "Yes. And the official investigation is moving too slowly. Mitchell has already covered his tracks. By the time they build a case strong enough to prosecute, he'll have disappeared or destroyed evidence or made a deal." "What are you saying?" Drew met her eyes. "I'm saying I'm not going to let that happen." Understanding dawned on Krista's face. "Drew, no. You can't. You'll throw your life away." "My life?" Drew's laugh was bitter. "My life is already over. My daughter was abused under my nose. My career is tainted. Even if they clear me, I'll always be the cop who missed his own family running a child porn ring. And every day that Mitchell walks free, more kids suffer. So tell me, Krista, what exactly do I have to lose? Lily needs her father. Lily needs a father who protects her, who makes sure the people who hurt her pay. The system isn't going to do that. So I will." Krista was quiet for a long time. "Then, what's your plan?" Drew hadn't expected that. "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do. Because if you're going after these people, you're going to need help. And despite everything, despite the fact that my family destroyed our lives, you're still my husband. And Lily is still my daughter. So what's the plan?" Drew studied her, saw the steel beneath the trauma. Krista had been a surgical nurse for 12 years. She'd held people's lives in her hands, made split-second decisions in crisis situations. She was stronger than she looked. "It's illegal," he warned. "If we get caught, we both go to prison. If we do nothing, more children get hurt. So tell me the plan." Drew pulled out his laptop and showed her what he'd found. They talked through the night, refining details, covering contingencies. By dawn, they had something that might work. Something that would give Warren Mitchell exactly what he deserved. And if Drew had to become a criminal to deliver that justice, so be it. The next week passed in careful preparation. Drew used his connections, cops he'd worked with, informants he'd cultivated over the years, to gather intelligence on Warren Mitchell. The man had a routine. Breakfast at an upscale cafe downtown every morning at 7. Office by 8:30. Lunch at his club on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Home by 6, except Wednesdays when he had a standing appointment. That Wednesday appointment was interesting. Mitchell visited a luxury condo building in the financial district. He stayed for exactly 2 hours, then left. Every week, without fail, Drew staked out the building. Mitchell's car was parked in a reserved spot. The doorman greeted him by name. Whatever happened in that building happened regularly and with permission. Drew called in a favor with Ramon Santos, a private investigator who'd worked with the police on several cases. Ramon had skills that weren't exactly legal, but were very useful. "I need to know what happens in Unit 4C every Wednesday evening," Drew told him. "Surveillance, photos, everything." "That building has security," Ramon warned. "Good security. I know. Can you do it?" "For you?" "Yeah. But Drew, this isn't an official investigation, is it?" "No." "Then I don't want to know why you need this. I'll get you the intel. What you do with it is your business." 3 days later, Ramon delivered. The photos made Drew's blood run cold. Unit 4C was registered to a shell company Mitchell owned. Inside, every Wednesday, Mitchell met with 3 other men. Drew recognized one of them immediately, Judge Harrison Wolf, presiding judge for the county superior court. The photos showed the men drinking, laughing, and in several shots, there was a laptop on the coffee table, the screen visible. Drew couldn't make out details, But the composition of the images was clear enough. They were viewing content. Content produced by people like the Giffords. Jesus Christ, Drew whispered. A sitting judge. Krista looked over his shoulder and went pale. That's Judge Wolf. He comes into the hospital sometimes. I've spoken to him. He seems so normal. They all do. That's how they get away with it. Drew identified the other two men through facial recognition software he wasn't supposed to have access to. Carlton Price, a city councilman, and Gregory Schwartz, CEO of a tech company that, interesting, provided encrypted communication services. The pieces fell into place. Mitchell was the shepherd. Wolf provided legal protection, could manipulate court proceedings, suppress investigations. Price handled political pressure, made sure the right people were in the right positions. And Schwartz provided the technical infrastructure. They weren't just criminals. They were a functioning conspiracy at the highest levels of power. We need to go to the FBI, Krista said. This is bigger than we thought. No. By the time the FBI builds a case, these men will have covered their tracks. And with a judge in their pocket, they can manipulate any investigation. Drew's mind was racing. We need something they can't deny. Something so public, so undeniable, that even their connections can't save them. Like what? Drew pulled up the property records for Unit 4C. They think they're safe in their little clubhouse. That no one knows what they do there. We're going to change that. Over the next 2 weeks, Drew and Krista executed the first phase of their plan. Using Ramon's intel on the building's security, Drew identified the weak points. The loading dock had minimal coverage. The service elevators required a key card, but Drew knew how to bypass that. One of his informants specialized in security systems. Terry noticed Drew's distraction during their check-in calls, but didn't press. The official investigation was moving forward. The Giffords were facing multiple charges. More victims had come forward. It was a victory by any standard. But it wasn't enough. The real challenge was getting into Unit 4C without triggering alarms. Drew called in another favor, this time with Nelson McKenna, a former Army Ranger who'd served with Drew's deceased brother and owed him a life debt. I need surveillance equipment installed in a residential unit, Drew explained. High-end building, good security. It needs to be undetectable. Nelson studied him. This sanctioned? No. You know I could lose my license for this. I know. And I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Nelson was quiet for a long moment. Your brother saved my life in Kandahar. I told him I'd look after you if anything happened. So yeah, I'll help. But Drew, be careful. Whatever you're into, it sounds dark. It is. They chose Tuesday night. Mitchell's pattern showed he never visited the condo on Tuesdays. Drew would create a distraction, a false alarm in the building's parking garage, while Nelson slipped in through the service entrance. 30 minutes to plant cameras and microphones, then out. Krista would be the lookout, monitoring police scanners and security frequencies from a van parked 2 blocks away. At 11 p.m. on Tuesday, Drew pulled the fire alarm in the parking garage. Security rushed to investigate. Nelson, dressed as a utility worker, entered through the loading dock and made his way to the 4th floor. Drew monitored his progress through a comm link. I'm in the hallway, Nelson whispered. Bypassing the lock now. Seconds ticked by. Drew watched the security guards in the garage, searching for the non-existent fire. Lock's open. I'm inside. More waiting. Drew's heart hammered. If Nelson was caught, if security checked their cameras, if anything went wrong. Cameras are planted. 3 angles on the main room, 1 in the bedroom, 2 audio pickups. Testing signal. A pause. Drew, you seeing this? Drew checked his laptop in the van. For video feeds appeared, crystal clear. The unit was empty, but the equipment worked perfectly. I've got it. Get out. Nelson was back in the van 12 minutes later, slightly out of breath, but grinning. Like old times. Your brother would have loved this. Thank you. What are you catching on these cameras? Evidence. That's all you need to know. Nelson nodded and left. Drew and Krista drove home in silence, both understanding they'd crossed a line. Breaking and entering, illegal surveillance. These weren't gray areas. They were felonies. If caught, Drew's career was over and both of them faced serious prison time. We can still stop, Krista said quietly. Destroy the equipment. Walk away. Drew thought about Lily's bruised face. The other children's hollow eyes. The years of abuse documented on those servers. No, we can't. Wednesday evening at 6 p.m., Warren Mitchell arrived at Unit 4C. Drew and Krista watched from their home office, recording everything. Judge Wolf arrived minutes later, then Price, then Schwartz. For the first hour, they just talked. Business, mostly. Mitchell complained about the police investigation into the Giffords, worried it might lead back to the network. Wolf assured him it wouldn't. He was personally overseeing the case assignments, making sure sympathetic judges got the trials. The Gifford woman is a problem, Price said. Velma. She's refusing to take a plea deal. Says she's got information that could bring down the whole operation. Mitchell's expression darkened. Then she needs to be convinced to keep her mouth shut. Already handled, Wolf said. I had a word with her defense attorney. Explained that cooperation would result in reduced charges. Silence would result in her grandchildren being removed from foster care and placed elsewhere. Drew's hands clenched into fists. They were threatening Lily. At 7 p.m., Schwartz opened his laptop. The men gathered around it. And for the next hour, Drew and Krista documented everything. The content they viewed. Their comments about it. Their discussions of new producers being recruited. Payments being processed. All of it. On camera. Undeniable. When Mitchell and his associates finally left around 9 p.m., Drew had everything he needed. Not just evidence of their crimes, but proof of the conspiracy, the cover-up, the ongoing operation. Now what? Krista asked. Now we make copies. Encrypt them. Store them in multiple locations. And then we decide exactly how we want these men to burn. But Drew already knew. He'd been planning it for days, refining every detail. These men had used their power to prey on the powerless. So Drew was going to strip away that power. Publicly, permanently, and painfully. They thought they were untouchable. Drew was going to prove them very, very wrong. The first domino fell on a Friday morning. Drew sent an anonymous package to FBI field office. Inside was an encrypted drive containing select footage from Unit 4C, enough to prove the men were viewing illegal content and discussing criminal conspiracy, but not enough to reveal Drew's surveillance operation. He included detailed documentation of the financial network, the shell companies, everything he'd uncovered. The second package went to the state attorney general's office. Different content, same message. High-level officials were involved in child exploitation. The third went to the Tribune, the city's largest newspaper. Their investigative team was known for breaking major corruption stories. Drew included instructions on how to verify the footage and names of victims who could corroborate. Then Drew waited. It took 4 days. 4 agonizing days of watching the news, monitoring police scanners, wondering if he'd made a mistake. Then the story broke. Judge implicated in child exploitation ring, screamed the Tribune's headline. Below it, detailed reporting on Warren Mitchell, Judge Wolf, and the network they'd built. The FBI confirmed they were investigating. The Attorney General announced a task force. Drew watched the press conference from his living room, Krista beside him. Judge Wolf had been arrested that morning at his home. Mitchell was in FBI custody. Price and Schwartz were wanted for questioning. We did it, Krista whispered. But Drew wasn't celebrating. Because he knew how this would play out. Arrests, sure. But men like this had resources. They'd hire the best attorneys. They'd make deals. They'd claim ignorance, blame underlings, tie the case up in appeals for years. And even if they went to prison, it would be minimum security, comfortable. A slap on the wrist for destroying lives. That wasn't justice. That was just procedure. We're not done, Drew said. That night, he received a call from Terry. Drew, I know it was you. The FBI package, the timing, it's too convenient. You've been investigating this on your own. I don't know what you're talking about. Bullshit. Look, I'm not going to report you. Whatever you did to get this evidence, it's working. Mitchell and Wolf are facing serious charges. But you need to stop now. Let the system handle the rest. The system is going to let them off easy. You know it as well as I do. Maybe. But it's not your call to make. You're not judge, jury, and executioner. You're right, Drew said calmly. I'm not. But he didn't say he wouldn't be. The problem with men like Mitchell was they always had contingency plans. Offshore accounts. Properties in countries without extradition. Allies who could help them disappear if things got too hot. Drew had learned that from studying the financial records. Mitchell had already moved money, was probably planning to run, which meant Drew needed to act fast. He used his police contacts to track Mitchell's movements. The man had been released on bail, $1 million, but pocket change to him, and was staying at his estate outside the city. 20 acres, gated, security guards. Fortress. But every fortress had weaknesses. Drew spent 3 days watching the property. Mitchell was scared, paranoid. He rarely left the house. His attorneys visited daily. His wife had moved out, smart woman. The staff had been reduced to 2 guards, a housekeeper, and a cook. On the 4th day, Drew saw his opening. Mitchell's attorney, a shark named Irving Blum who specialized in defending the indefensible, arrived for a consultation. He stayed for 3 hours. When he left, he carried a briefcase that looked heavier than when he'd arrived. Drew followed Blum to a storage facility across town, watched him access a unit, place the briefcase inside, then leave. Whatever was in that briefcase, Mitchell wanted it hidden. Evidence, probably. Or insurance. Something he could use to leverage a better deal or to bargain with if he needed to run. Drew waited until nightfall, then broke into the storage unit. The briefcase was locked, but Drew's lock-picking skills, learned during his years in Vice, made short work of it. Inside were hard drives, 6 of them, and a ledger documenting transactions going back 20 years. Drew nearly laughed. Mitchell had kept records, detailed records, of everything. Every payment, every producer in the network, every customer who'd purchased content. Names, dates, amounts. It was a prosecutorial goldmine. And it was also Mitchell's leverage. If he went down, this ledger could take down hundreds of others. Drew photographed every page, copied every hard drive, then carefully replaced everything exactly as he'd found it. Mitchell couldn't know the information had been compromised. Not yet, because Drew had a better use for it. Back home, he spent 2 days analyzing the ledger. The scope was staggering. Producers in 15 states. Customers in 30 countries. Payments totaling tens of millions of dollars. And at the center of it all, the names kept appearing. Mitchell, Wolf, Price, Schwartz. But there were other names too. Politicians, business leaders, even 2 prominent clergy members. People who'd built careers on family values while secretly financing child exploitation. Drew made a list. 23 names total. 23 people who needed to be exposed. Destroyed. You can't possibly go after all of them, Krista said when he showed her. This is too big. Too many powerful people. I'm not going after them. The information is. I'm just going to make sure it gets to the right places. What does that mean? Drew pulled up a website on his laptop. WikiLeaks style, designed for anonymous document dumps. This site specializes in exposing corruption. Everything's encrypted, untraceable. I upload the ledger and the footage from Unit 4C, and it goes public. No taking it back. No making deals. They'll know it came from you. They'll suspect. But they can't prove it. And by the time they figure it out, it won't matter. The damage will be done. Krista stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she reached out and clicked the upload button herself. For Lily, she said quietly. For all of them. The files uploaded over the course of 6 hours. When it was done, Drew sent anonymous tips to every major media outlet, linking to the document dump. Then he sat back and waited for the explosion. It came at dawn. The story went viral within hours. Major news networks picked it up. Social media exploded. The ledger's contents were dissected, analyzed, cross-referenced. Names were named. Careers imploded. Within 24 hours, 8 arrests had been made. 3 politicians resigned. 2 CEOs stepped down. A prominent televangelist church was raided. And Warren Mitchell's carefully constructed empire burned to ash. But Drew still wasn't satisfied. Because Mitchell was still alive. Still comfortable in his mansion. Still breathing while the children he'd exploited lived with lifelong trauma. That needed to change. Drew knew what he was contemplating. Knew it crossed the final line from vigilante justice into something darker. Murder. Premeditated, calculated murder. He thought about Lily. Asked himself if he could look her in the eye knowing he'd become a killer. And he realized he could. Because the alternative, letting Mitchell live, letting him possibly escape punishment through legal technicalities, was worse. Some monsters needed to be put down. Drew began planning. He would need an alibi. Something ironclad. And the method had to be untraceable, look like an accident or suicide. Mitchell was under FBI surveillance, which complicated things, but also provided opportunity. A man under that kind of pressure might take his own life. It happened. You're thinking about killing him, Krista said. Not a question. Yes. I can't be part of that, Drew. I've helped you expose these people, but I can't help you commit murder. I'm not asking you to, but I need you to know. After this, I might go to prison. If that happens, Lily needs you. You have to be strong for her. Krista's eyes filled with tears. There has to be another way. There isn't. Mitchell has resources we can't imagine. Even with all this exposure, he'll find a way out. He always does. Men like him always do. Before Drew could act on his plan, everything changed. He woke Saturday morning to his phone buzzing frantically. News alerts. Text from Terry. A voicemail from Captain Morse. Warren Mitchell was dead. Drew turned on the news. Helicopter footage showed Mitchell's estate. Emergency vehicles everywhere. The reporter's voice was breathless. Found in his study early this morning by house staff. Preliminary reports suggest suicide, though authorities are not ruling out other possibilities. Mitchell had been under investigation for involvement in an international child exploitation ring. Drew stared at the screen, stunned. He hadn't done this. Hadn't even gotten close to executing his plan. So who had? His phone rang. Terry. You see the news? Yeah. What happened? Single gunshot wound to the head. Gun was in his hand. Note on the desk confessing to everything. FBI thinks it's legitimate, but they're treating it as suspicious given the timing. Do they think someone killed him? They think someone might have convinced him that killing himself was the better option. Drew, where were you last night? Home. With Krista. All night. Good. Keep it that way. Because there's going to be a lot of questions, and you're going to be on a very short list of suspects. Drew hung up and felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that Mitchell was gone. Confusion about how it happened. And underneath it all, a nagging suspicion. The answer came 3 hours later in the form of a text from an unknown number. Justice has been served. Stay close to your family. A friend. Drew stared at the message. Someone else had been after Mitchell. Someone who'd acted faster than Drew. But who? He pulled up the surveillance footage from Unit 4C, scanning through saved recordings. And there, in a conversation from 2 weeks ago, he found his answer. Mitchell and Wolf discussing Velma Gifford. How she'd become a liability. How she needed to be handled. And Mitchell saying, casually, that he'd already arranged for someone to take care of it. But in the background of the recording, barely visible through the window, was a figure. Drew enhanced the image, zoomed in. Nelson McKenna. Drew's blood ran cold. Nelson had installed the cameras. Had access to all the recordings. And Nelson had connections, military, intelligence, people who specialized in making problems disappear. Drew called him. Was it you? Don't know what you're talking about. Mitchell. Did you kill him? Silence on the line. Then, your brother asked me to look after you. To make sure you didn't throw your life away doing something stupid. When I saw what these men were doing, saw what you were planning, I made a call. Got some old friends involved. Men who know how to handle monsters. Jesus Christ, Nelson. You should be thanking me. Mitchell's dead. The network is exposed. Those men are going to prison. And you get to keep being a father to your daughter. That's a win. It's murder. It's justice. Real justice, not the legal kind. Now delete this call log. Forget we talked. And go hug your kid. The line went dead. Drew sat in stunned silence, processing. Nelson had done what Drew couldn't. Had crossed the line Drew had been preparing to cross. And had saved Drew from becoming a murderer. Should he report it? Turn Nelson in? Drew thought about Lily. About all the victims. About Mitchell's cold calculations and complete lack of remorse. And he deleted the call log. Some justice happened outside the system. And sometimes, that was okay. 3 months later, Drew stood in a courtroom watching Velma Gifford receive her sentence. Life in prison without parole. Earl got the same. Gerard, Lorenzo, and Austin received sentences ranging from 25 to 40 years. Judge Wolf had taken a plea deal. 30 years in federal prison. Carlton Price was awaiting trial. Gregory Schwartz had fled the country, but was on Interpol's most wanted list. 20 of the 23 names from Mitchell's ledger had been prosecuted. 3 had died. 1 suicide. 2 accidents that Drew suspected were Nelson's friends cleaning up loose ends. The network was destroyed. But Drew knew others would rise to take its place. They always did. Lily sat between Drew and Krista, holding both their hands. She'd testified twice, had been in therapy 3 times a week, and was slowly healing. She still had nightmares. Still flinched at unexpected touches. But she was laughing again. Playing again. Being a kid again. That's what mattered. As they left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Drew ignored them, focused on getting Lily to the car. His lawyer, Marcus, ran interference, keeping the press back. Officer Vega, do you feel justice was served? Drew paused, turned. looked directly into the camera. Justice for the victims is an ongoing process. The sentences handed down today are just the beginning. These children will live with what was done to them for the rest of their lives. So no, justice isn't served. But it started. In the car, Lily fell asleep against Krista's shoulder. Drew drove them home through familiar streets that felt different now. Lighter somehow, like a shadow had been lifted. We did it, Krista said softly. It's really over. Yeah, we did. That night, after Lily was asleep, Drew and Krista sat on their back porch with beers, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. I got a call from the hospital, Krista said. They want me back. Full reinstatement. That's great. Is it? I don't know if I can face people. Everyone knows my family was what they were. You're not them. You stopped them. That's what people will remember. Krista was quiet for a while. What about you? What are you going to do? Drew had been thinking about that. Captain Morse had offered to bring him back on active duty. The administrative leave was over, the internal review complete. He'd been cleared of wrongdoing. But Drew wasn't sure he wanted to go back. The job felt tainted now. He'd seen too much of humanity's darkness. I don't know yet. Maybe something different. Maybe work with organizations that help victims. Put my experience to good use. That sounds good. Krista reached over, took his hand. Drew, I know these last few months have been hell. I know our marriage was tested. But I want you to know, I'm grateful. For everything you did. For fighting for Lily. For fighting for all those kids. Drew squeezed her hand. We fought together. Yeah, we did. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, holding on to each other. The road ahead would be long. Healing took time. But they'd survived. And they'd made sure the monsters who'd hurt their daughter would never hurt anyone again. That was enough. That was everything. 6 months after the trials, Drew got a phone call from an unlisted number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Officer Vega. A woman's voice, calm and professional. My name is Dr. Sarah Chun. We met when your daughter was first brought into CPS. I remember. Is Lily okay? Lily's fine. I'm calling about something else. Something unusual. A pause. I work with an organization that helps victims of exploitation. We've been following your case, and we're impressed with what you accomplished. I just did what any father would do. No, you did what very few have the courage to do. You exposed a major network, brought down powerful people, and did it while protecting your daughter. That takes a special kind of determination. Another pause. Mr. Vega, we have resources. Legal, financial, investigative. We help people who fall through the cracks of the justice system. People fighting monsters that the law can't or won't touch. And we could use someone with your skills. Drew was quiet, processing. What exactly are you offering? A job. A purpose. A way to keep fighting for victims who need someone in their corner. It's not official law enforcement. It exists in the gray areas. But it makes a difference. Drew thought about Nelson. About justice outside the system. About all the monsters still out there, preying on the innocent. Tell me more, he said. Dr. Chin did. And by the time the call ended, Drew had a new purpose. A new mission. The law had limits. But Drew Vega didn't. And somewhere out there, monsters were about to learn that when you hurt children, when you prey on the innocent, when you think you're untouchable, there's always someone willing to prove you wrong. Someone like Drew Vega. The war was just beginning. But this time, Drew was ready. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.